"All 7 of us are yours," said the beautiful daughter of his deceased knee. He never interfered in other people's matters and expected the same in return. His life followed the same routine every day, and he was used to being alone. Next door lived his neighbor, a woman who had been struggling for many years. Her husband had passed away long ago, leaving her alone with 7 children. Life had not been kind to her. She worked wherever she could, sometimes cleaning houses, sometimes stitching clothes, sometimes selling small items in the local market. Despite all her efforts, it was never enough. Still, she tried her best to keep her children fed, clothed, and in school. The man often noticed her tired face and the worry in her eyes, but he never asked questions. Sometimes he quietly helped by fixing a broken door, carrying heavy items, or giving small advice. It was never spoken about, never announced. Then one day, everything changed. The neighbor fell seriously ill. At first, people thought it was just weakness from overwork, but her condition worsened quickly. She was taken to the hospital, and the children were left at home, confused and afraid. The man noticed the house was unusually quiet. Days passed, and then the news spread across the street. The woman had passed away. The day of the funeral was heavy with sadness. The house that was once full of noise and arguments now felt empty and cold. Relatives came, neighbors gathered, and everyone spoke in low voices. The children sat together in a corner, holding onto one another like they were afraid of being separated. The youngest did not fully understand what had happened, while the older ones tried to stay strong, even though their eyes were swollen from crying. The man stood at a distance. He paid his respects quietly, offering a prayer, then prepared to leave. He did not want to intrude. As he turned away, a soft but firm voice stopped him. It was the eldest daughter. She was still very young, but her face carried a seriousness far beyond her age. She stepped forward, her hands shaking slightly, but her eyes steady. Everyone around them grew silent as she spoke. Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of desperation and courage. "All 7 of us are yours," she said. The man froze. For a moment he thought he had not heard her correctly. He looked at her, then at the children behind her. They were watching him with fear and hope mixed together. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. People around them murmured. Some looked shocked. Some looked confused. Others looked uncomfortable. The girl continued, her voice trembling but determined. She explained that there was no one else. Their relatives were unwilling or unable to take them in. Some wanted to separate the children, sending them to different places. She did not want that. She wanted them to stay together. She believed the man next door was kind, honest, and strong enough to help them survive. The man felt his heart grow heavy. He had never imagined such responsibility. He barely managed his own life. How could he take care of 7 children? He thought of his small house, his limited income, his simple routine. Everything would be turned upside down. He gently tried to refuse. He told her he was not capable, that he was not prepared. But the girl did not argue. She simply looked at him, and that look stayed with him. It was not demanding. It was trusting. That night the man could not sleep. The words echoed in his mind again and again. He thought of the children, now without parents, facing a world that was already harsh even with one. He thought of how easily people turned away when responsibility became heavy. He also thought of himself, of the life he had built around comfort in loneliness. The next morning, he went to the neighbor's house. The children were sitting on the floor, eating dry bread. The eldest daughter stood up when she saw him. Her eyes filled with tears, but she did not cry. She waited. He did not make promises. He did not give big speeches. He simply told them they would not be alone, at least for now. That was enough for them. The younger one smiled for the first time in days. Soon, reality began to set in. Authorities asked questions. Neighbors whispered. Some people accused the man of taking on something suspicious. Others warned him that this would destroy his life. He listened quietly, as he always had. Inside, fear and doubt battled with something deeper, a sense of responsibility he could not explain. The children moved into his house temporarily. It was small and crowded, but it was safer than being separated. Nights were difficult. Some children cried silently. Some had nightmares. The man stayed awake many times, unsure of what to do but refusing to abandon them. The eldest daughter tried to manage everything. She woke up early, cleaned, helped the younger ones, and pretended to be strong. One night the man saw her sitting alone, quietly crying. That moment made him realize that she was still just a child. He spoke to her gently. He told her she did not have to carry everything alone. She nodded, though she did not fully believe it yet. Money became a serious problem. His income barely covered basic needs. He skipped meals without telling anyone. He worked longer hours, accepted harder tasks, and came home exhausted. Still, when he saw the children waiting for him, something inside him pushed him forward. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, routines formed. The children began to feel a sense of stability. They started trusting him. Laughter returned in small moments. The house was noisy now, chaotic but alive. The man knew this was only the beginning. The road ahead was long and uncertain. But as he watched the 7 children sleep peacefully one night, he understood something important. Life had given him a responsibility he never asked for, but maybe it had also given him a purpose he never knew he needed. This was how everything began. Life did not become easier after the first few weeks. In many ways, it became harder. The man soon realized that kindness alone was not enough to raise 7 children. Every day brought a new challenge, and every night ended with exhaustion. He woke up earlier than before and returned home later than ever. His body felt tired, but his mind was always racing with worry. The small house felt even smaller now. There was not enough space, not enough bedding, and never enough silence. The younger children fought over small things, cried for their mother, and asked questions the man did not always know how to answer. When they asked where their mother was, his chest felt tight. He learned to answer gently, with honesty, but without causing more pain. The eldest daughter continued to act like a shield for her siblings. She watched everything carefully. She tried to manage the household as if she were an adult, but her tired eyes showed the truth. She often skipped meals to make sure the younger ones ate enough. She smiled in front of them, but the man noticed how quiet she became when she thought no one was watching. Outside the house, people talked. Some neighbors admired what the man was doing, but many did not trust it. They whispered questions and shared doubts. Some said he was foolish. Others suggested the children would be better off elsewhere. A few even made serious accusations without any proof. The man heard these words and felt hurt, but he did not respond. He believed that arguing would only make things worse. Soon, officials came to ask questions. They wanted to know how the children were being cared for, how food was arranged, and how safety was being ensured. The man answered honestly. He did not hide his struggles. He explained that he was doing his best, even though it was not perfect. The eldest daughter stood beside him, holding the hand of the youngest child, listening quietly. There was talk of separating the children. That idea shook everyone deeply. The younger ones cried when they heard it. The eldest daughter finally broke down and begged that they stay together. She said they had already lost their parents and could not bear to lose each other too. That moment changed something in the man. He realized this was no longer a temporary situation. If he stepped back now, the children's lives could fall apart. That thought stayed with him long after the officials left. Money problems became heavier. School fees were overdue. Clothes were worn out. Shoes had holes. The man began to count every coin carefully. He stopped buying anything for himself. He ate simple meals or skipped them entirely. Sometimes he returned home with a smile even when his stomach was empty. He looked for extra work. He accepted jobs that were harder and paid less, just to keep things moving. Some nights, he came home so tired that he could barely stand. Still, he sat with the children, listened to their stories, and made sure they felt safe. The children reacted differently to their new life. One became quiet and distant. Another became angry and stubborn. The younger ones clung to the man whenever he left the house, afraid he might not return. He learned that grief did not look the same for everyone. He learned patience the hard way. The eldest daughter struggled the most. She felt guilty for asking the man to take responsibility for them. Some nights she apologized again and again. The man told her she had done nothing wrong. He reminded her that asking for help was not weakness. Slowly, she began to believe him. School was another challenge. Teachers asked questions. Some children fell behind in their studies because of stress and lack of focus. The man attended meetings he had never imagined being part of. He felt uncomfortable, but he listened carefully and tried to support the children in every way he could. At home, the rules were simple but firm. Respect, honesty, and effort were expected. There were no harsh punishments, only guidance and conversation. When mistakes were made, they were discussed. The children were not used to this at first. Over time, they began to understand that discipline could exist with kindness. The community remained divided. Some people slowly changed their opinions after seeing the man's consistency. Others remained critical. Rumors came and went. The man learned to ignore them. He focused on what mattered, the 7 lives depending on him. One evening, a neighbor came quietly and left a bag of groceries outside the door. Another day, a teacher offered extra help after school. These small acts of support gave the man strength. He realized that while many judged, some cared deeply. The household slowly found its rhythm. Morning routines, school schedules, chores, and shared meals began to feel normal. Laughter returned in short moments. The children started calling the house home again. Still, fear never fully left the man's heart. He worried about the future, about mistakes he might make, about whether he was enough. But each night when he saw the children sleeping safely under his roof, he reminded himself why he stayed. He was no longer just surviving for himself. He was standing between 7 fragile lives and a world that could easily break them. And even though the weight was heavy, he carried it, one day at a time. Time passed, and slowly, the house began to change. It was still small and crowded, but it no longer felt broken. The walls heard laughter again, and the rooms carried voices filled with life. The man noticed these changes quietly. He never spoke about them, but he felt them deeply. The children were growing, not just in age, but in strength. Pain was still inside them, but it no longer controlled every moment. They started waking up with purpose. School became part of their routine again. Bags were packed every morning, lunches were prepared as best as possible, and shoes were lined up near the door. These small habits brought order to lives that once felt shattered. The man learned many things during this time. He learned how to listen more than speak. He learned how to stay calm even when everything inside him felt heavy. He learned that love was not always shown through words, but through being present every single day, no matter how tired he was. The eldest daughter slowly began to change. At first, she had carried herself like a grown woman, hiding her fear behind responsibility. But over time, she allowed herself to breathe. She began to laugh again, quietly at first, then freely. She returned to her studies with focus. The man encouraged her, telling her that her dreams mattered too. Hearing those words felt strange to her but comforting. One evening, she asked him why he stayed, why he did not walk away when things became so difficult. The man thought for a long moment before answering. He told her that sometimes life puts people in our path not to test us, but to teach us who we really are. She listened carefully, and something in her heart felt lighter. Each child had their own journey. One of the younger boys had been angry since his mother's passing. He broke things, shouted, and pushed others away. The man never raised his voice at him. Instead, he spoke calmly and waited. One night the boy finally cried and admitted he was afraid of being left alone again. The man listened and assured him that fear was normal, but he was not alone anymore. From that night on, the boy slowly softened. Another child struggled with school. Concentration was difficult, and confidence was low. The man sat beside them many evenings, helping with lessons even when he barely understood the material himself. They learned together. Mistakes were made, but effort was never discouraged. The youngest child often asked questions about their mother. Simple questions, asked with innocence. The man answered gently. He did not rush the child's emotions or silence their curiosity. He allowed memories to be spoken, stories to be shared, and tears to fall when needed. The house became a place where feelings were allowed. Money was still a constant struggle. There were days when the man felt defeated. Bills waited on the table. Clothes were passed down from one child to another, but he never let the children feel ashamed. He taught them gratitude instead. He showed them how to value effort over comfort and honesty over appearance. Sometimes, when the children were asleep, the man sat alone in the dark, wondering how long he could continue like this. His body ached. His future felt uncertain. But every morning when he heard footsteps and voices filling the house, his doubts grew quieter. The community's attitude continued to shift. People noticed how the children behaved, how they spoke, how they improved. Teachers began praising their efforts. Neighbors started greeting the man with respect rather than suspicion. Slowly, trust replaced gossip. One day, the eldest daughter came home with news that she had done well in an important exam. She tried to act calm, but her excitement was clear. The man smiled and congratulated her. He told her how proud he was. Those words stayed with her longer than she expected. That night she cried, not from sadness but from relief. For the first time in a long while she felt seen as a child, not just a caretaker. The man never called himself their guardian or anything else. He simply did what needed to be done. He woke up early. He worked hard. He came home, he listened. He corrected when needed and encouraged whenever possible. This consistency became the foundation of the household. There were setbacks too. Arguments happened. Old fears returned sometimes. One child tried to run away after a bad day at school. Another refused to eat for days. The man handled each situation patiently. He learned that healing was not straight. It moved forward and backward again and again. One rainy evening the electricity went out. The house was dark and the younger children became scared. The man lit a small lamp and gathered them all in one room. They shared simple stories, laughed, and listened to the rain outside. That night, the eldest daughter realized something important. The house did not feel empty anymore. It felt full not of things but of warmth. As months passed, the man noticed changes in himself too. He was no longer just surviving. He had grown stronger emotionally. He had learned to care deeply without fear. He had learned that responsibility could shape a person rather than destroy them. The children began to help more around the house. They cleaned, cooked simple meals, and supported each other. They learned teamwork and respect. These lessons stayed with them. One afternoon, the man returned home exhausted. He expected chaos, but instead, he found the children waiting for him with smiles. They had prepared a simple meal together. It was not perfect, but it was made with care. In that moment, the man felt something powerful. He realized he was no longer just giving. He was receiving too. The eldest daughter watched him closely that day. She saw the tired lines on his face and the kindness in his eyes. She understood that he had given up many things for them. Quietly, she promised herself that she would never take this second chance for granted. Life was still uncertain. The future was still unknown. But something strong had formed inside that small house: trust, stability, belonging. The man understood that these children were no longer just a responsibility. They were a part of his life, woven into his days and nights. And the children understood something too. Even without sharing blood, they had found someone who chose them every day. This was no longer just survival. This was growth. Years passed quietly, the way meaningful time often does. There was no single day when everything suddenly became perfect. Instead, life slowly settled into a steady rhythm. The small house, once filled with fear and uncertainty, now carried confidence and warmth. It still had problems, but it also had strength. The children were no longer the same frightened faces that had once clung to each other in silence. They had grown taller, wiser, and more independent. Each of them carried memories of loss, but those memories no longer defined them. They had learned how to live with the past without being trapped by it. The man had changed too. His hair showed signs of age and his body tired more easily, but his heart felt fuller than it ever had. He had become a calm presence, someone others trusted. He did not speak much about what he had done. To him, it was simply life unfolding one day at a time. The eldest daughter stood at the center of many of these changes. She was no longer carrying the weight of the entire household on her shoulders. She had learned how to dream again. Education became her focus, and she worked hard with determination. There were moments of doubt, moments when she feared failing, but the man's steady belief in her never faded. Whenever she felt overwhelmed, he reminded her of how far she had already come. He never pressured her. He simply stood beside her the same way he had from the beginning. That quiet support became her strongest source of confidence. The younger children followed their own paths. One discovered a love for learning. Another showed talent in practical skills. Some were talkative, others thoughtful. The man encouraged each one differently, understanding that no two hearts were the same. He listened carefully, observed patiently, and guided gently. The house remained simple. There were no luxuries, no unnecessary comforts, but there was honesty, there was structure, there was care. Shared meals, shared responsibilities, and shared laughter became part of daily life. Problems were discussed openly. Mistakes were treated as lessons, not failures. The community fully changed its view over time. People who once doubted now showed respect. Teachers spoke highly of the children's discipline and progress. Neighbors trusted the man and often sought his advice. He accepted this quietly, never seeking praise. Occasionally, someone would ask him why he had chosen this path. He always gave the same simple answer. He said that sometimes life places people together for reasons that are not clear at first. What matters is what you choose to do once you are there. The children often talked about their mother. Her memory was never erased. Stories were shared honestly, without fear or sadness taking over. The man never tried to replace her. He simply ensured that her children grew up feeling safe, respected, and valued. That was his role, and he carried it with dignity. As time went on, responsibilities slowly shifted. The children became more capable. They helped each other. They supported the man when he was tired. The household became a team, not a burden. One evening, the eldest daughter sat alone, thinking about the past. She remembered the day she had spoken those bold words, asking the man to take responsibility for all 7 of them. At the time, she had been desperate, afraid, and unsure. Now, she understood the courage it had taken from both sides. She also understood the cost. She realized that the man had given them something far greater than shelter or food. He had given them stability during chaos. He had chosen consistency when it was easier to walk away. That choice had shaped their futures. When she finally spoke to him about it, thanking him with emotion in her voice, he listened quietly. He did not interrupt. When she finished, he smiled gently and told her that she had also given him something important. She had given his life meaning when he did not know he needed it. That moment stayed with both of them. The younger children grew into responsible individuals. They carried lessons of patience, respect, and gratitude into their lives. They understood the value of effort and honesty. They did not see themselves as victims of circumstance, but as people who had survived and grown. The house slowly became quieter as the children spent more time outside, studying, working, and building their own paths. Still, they returned often. That house remained their foundation. The man never asked for recognition. He never expected anything in return. Watching the children stand on their own feet was enough. Seeing them confident and hopeful was his greatest reward. On a calm evening, as the sun set softly, the man sat outside the house, listening to familiar voices inside. He reflected on the life he once lived, quiet, isolated, and predictable. He compared it to the life he had now, challenging, noisy, and deeply meaningful. He understood then that family is not always formed by birth. Sometimes it is formed by choice, sacrifice, and daily effort. Sometimes the strongest bonds are built during the hardest moments. The eldest daughter stood nearby, watching him. She no longer saw him as just the man next door. She saw him as the reason her siblings were together, safe, and hopeful. She saw him as the steady presence that had carried them through loss and uncertainty. Life would continue to bring challenges. That much was certain. But they had learned how to face them together. The story did not end with a dramatic moment or grand celebration. It ended quietly the way real lives often do, with understanding, with gratitude, with strength built over time. And in that small house filled with shared memories and earned trust, a family stood firm, not because they had to, but because they chose to.